Step back into the stunning world of Arcane. The groundbreaking series from Riot Games that redefined what animation can be. In this special session, concept artist Charles Lee takes us behind the scenes of Arcane Season 2, sharing his creative process and the visual decisions that helped shape this unforgettable world. Please welcome the incredible Charles Lee.
Hey guys, thanks for coming. Wow, I think more people than last year. I don't know how many of you guys actually came to the center of that amazing art, the brought together. And you can still find so many amazing artists from the map painters, the concept artists to the storyboard. You can really find a lot of those online, and it's just it's mesmerizing even for myself, working in the team, because the Arcane team at Riot, which is in Santa Monica, we're a little different than the Fortiche studio. So basically, we had the showrunner there, and then we had the writers room that just writes a lot of just most of the scripts at Arcane. We had our small art team to actually communicate with the Fortiche the team in Paris to execute the showrunners the vision and all that. So we're super lucky to. It was in the beginning, I was really lucky to actually to be a part of the Arcane project in the beginning, which we took 7 years. And so, but going for Fortiche Studio was it's just a blessing as an artist, and a blessing for a lot of the artists that we worked at Riot. So that I also worked in the animation industry, such as the Sony animations. One of the artists it was John and our team, and then he did an amazing job. And then for season 2, Fortiche had this amazing fight sequence. Then they wanted to design the Smeech's arm. So they already had the Smeech's design itself, but because they came up with this amazing fight sequence, they had to design the Smeech's arm very differently. I think before Smeech just had just a regular arm, it wasn't the robotic arm. But I think it was I think Arno, which is one of the directors at Fortiche, and then every episode of season 2 had the episodic directors. So they have this 2-3 the main directors, and then every episode was also directed by the episodic director. So each director is actually one of the artists from the Fortiche. So this very episode, which involves the Sevika and the Smeech fight, was directed by the Marietta. I think it's spelled Marietta. Yeah, she's one of the most talented storyboard artists I've ever met. So she actually came up with, I think her and then Arno, one of the main director, they wanted to make this fight very unique. So between Smeech and the Sevika, so I'll share the Sevika's the arm design too, but this is really interesting because Sevika's arm design and then this is Smeech's robotic arm design. For me, it was an extreme case. I'm not saying any of the design was easy to execute, but Smeech's arm was probably the most smooth process for my entire time at the Arcane design, because from beginning to the end, I exactly knew what the directors wanted, and then directors exactly they really liked the direction I was kind of implementing too. So in the other hand, the Sevika's arm was probably it took the longest time, and then probably it touched by probably 5-6 artists to execute the design. So this is a really interesting design, and I'll share why it is that also. So I think this was the very first episode of, correct me if I'm wrong, because I forgot, so you guys probably know better, but this was the very first episode of season 2. The idea was make this fight very, very fun and very the lighthearted and the whimsical. So, but the script was a very specific that, okay, the Smeech's arm should be robotic, it should be like an extendable, but also it should be able to somehow spin so it can deflect all the bullets that come towards him. So I was like, oh wow, that's really interesting. So first of all, every task, the way we approach is very different, but this one is, Fortiche actually, the director, Arno, gave us really a lot of freedom. So I was like, oh yeah, that the way the script was explaining the Smeech's arm was really interesting, but that reminded me of one of the shot from like a Ghost in the Shell, as you can see at the bottom here, is a bateau. So I think this is the movie called The Innocent. So at the end, his arm actually it opens it up in all different directions, and then the cannon comes out. So I thought of the similar mechanics, so that'll be really cool. And then yeah, Arno was, I think he really liked the idea as well. So the really cool thing about working with the Fortiche is all the directors there is we all grown up with the Japanese animation. So all the reference they were giving us and then we were suggesting, it's almost not identical, but at least 80-90%. Hey, how about the Akira? Oh, how about Cowboy Bebop? And then they were yeah, let's do that. So and it was such an amazing process. So that was the first inspiration I got from, and then this is one of the reference image I found from the internet. There's some kind of this pistol that has this kind of extendable, some kind of a cane looking type kind of thing. So it all started from here, and then this was a very first sketch. Yeah, I was kind of exploring. So Smeech's arm. Yeah, so I was thinking yeah, how about it'll be really interesting if the whole the arm structure could split into three different the segments, and also the whole the length of the arm could be extended. And then one thing I also knew was, I think the director told us that so Smeech had to use his finger to actually point at the Jinx eye. So oh yeah, we have to have that functionality as well. So I was kind of going through that, and then after that I was from here up until here I didn't show this to directors. I was kind of keep going with the ideas. So from here I'm going to go a little deeper into it. Obviously this is my favorite, not favorite, but I'll say most comfortable way of approaching any concepts, just a pure light drawing. Yeah, I was kind of trying to see okay, what would be the possibilities I can do. So a lot of here you can see he has a lot of blazes are hiding inside the forearm, and then it was kind of started coming out, and they can extend it. So yeah, the direction was really cool. And then I think the production designer for our team, Arno Bidri, he really liked this direction as well. So I was keep going with that, and then I took this to kind of the render as well. So I went to see okay, so with the kind of the Arcane, because at that point in season 2 we kind of knew exactly what the production the art style was. So even the concept, when we were doing the concept, we tried to mimic just a little bit of the art style of the Arcane, the final the look. So yeah, I was playing with the color, and then as the script says, oh, the blades should be able to come out and then start spinning, so it can kind of deflect all the the bullets and stuff like that. So I was kind of exploring that. So at this point I was okay, yeah, I feel great about it. Let's see what the directors think, and then I sent this to the Arno, the Fortiche, and then they came up with really cool feedback. So oh yeah, the direction looks really cool, the vibe looks really awesome. And then on Fortiche's side, they had all the, it was so funny, even some of the color script, I don't know how many of you guys saw the color script of Arcane. they literally, each panel looks it is a mapping, so in the beginning, our Riot, the Arcane team at Riot, we're doing some of the color script, and the Fortiche was we're kind of doing it at the same time. But at the end we're why we even try? Let's just let the Fortiche do all the color script. It was just it was just amazing, the level. So I think same as the storyboard, their storyboard team is just fantastical. I can't believe the ideas they were coming out with, and So this was from like the Maeda. She was one of the storyboard artists and became the episodic director of this the project. And she and the director actually came up with like, oh, okay, so if the very specific fight sequence, the mechanism of the arm has to follow this. So this is like a flat, kind of like a 2D drawing, but actually like they sent us the animatics, the animation. So the animation move was like, as you guys can see here, like the red, blue, the mark is like actual blade. So how the blade was kind of hiding here, and then it should start coming out, and then it forms like that. So they actually came up with this idea that, okay, so this is the exact like the animation sequence for the Smeech's arm that has to be in the show. So their note was like, yeah, the direction design, it's the design direction I took on here was really, really cool. So I can just keep going with it, but I just have to maintain the animations like sequence like that. So I have to be very aware of when I design like the rest or even take it to next step. This animation could like, it has to work exactly right in the design. So yeah, and at that point I was like, yeah, this is great. So then all the hard part was done. So what I did was, as you can see here, you kind of see the layer here. So I took the exact like the 3D like a model like the footage sent me, and then I started designing. So based on everything I kind of like designed before, so all I had to do was like just to translate this. So this was like a phase 2 of the Smeech's arm, which became the final design. So ABCD, it just different sequences exactly that matches the sequence of the animation. So all I had to do was say, okay, so now I know I want to put some kind of like a metal skeletal structure in the forearm, and then these like blades, those 3 blades that has to follow exactly as the animation indicated. So I started designing the blade, the structure, and because we've been doing a lot of like the design, so this kind of like a gothic campunk design was already like in our it was really like easy, and it was kind of like it became our second nature by the time. So I kind of started like doing a live drawing to finish the finalized design, and then after that was just the walks. Easiest part was rendering. So this is how it came out. So this was like the final render of it, and then it was pretty amazing. Like the final like the compositing, like it literally looked identical. Like only difference is that actually this is like so cool. Like when Fortiche take it, every time we send the like concept, like whether it's like kind of collaborated with a Fortiche, or like sometimes we take a little more charge and we kind of like design some props or like environments from the Riot Studio. They always turn these into like, they just do the magic, and then when the final compositing came out, like I couldn't believe like you looked exactly like this. So yeah, I mean this was like the whole sequence took like 2 to 3 weeks for from beginning to maybe I'm wrong, like a little longer, but that considered to be very short in the entire like the Arcane like the production. So yeah, I think it was very smooth. But the only difference the Fortiche added was in this outside shell, like, and I kind of like the painted just completely like solid like metal. But I think that if you look at the whole fight sequence, I think the Fortiche artist actually even took that little like detail, that the Zon detail, and then they actually implemented that on top of that shell as well, which worked so much better. So yeah, it's really fun. Like now you guys know the detail, so you guys can like go back and watch it, the whole sequence, and then how it came out like different and all that. Yeah, and that was the Smeech's design and Smeech's arms design, and then very unlikely to, as I was kind of like mentioned a little bit earlier, this was the next step was like I was like so happy. Oh my god, like it went like everything was so smooth. Like I can't wait to design like the next thing. And then so the next task was like the Sevika's arm, and then when I got the description was crazy because it's probably like the most complicated prop design, I'm pretty sure like whether I was involved or like someone else designed it. It took the longest. I think it took as long as the Jinx final weapon. That has like a rhino and the shark head. That one took pretty long too. But this Sevika's arm like took almost like 2-3 months, and then we took a break, and then we came back, and then we spent another like a month. And then yeah, it was crazy, but the way it came out like really awesome. So the direction of this in the beginning was nothing like what you guys saw in the show, because like in the beginning, like you guys can see here, like these at the bottom, like it's very different from the final design of the Sevika's art, right? Because later, I think it was Arno, as one of the project directors, he came up with this idea that like, yeah, the whole arm should consist of like everything that is from like the arcade. Like the arcade in the show, like the Jinx and like the bike, they kind of spend their like the childhood and so, which is amazing idea, like because it's not just about the cool design, but it's about the narrative direction. It's about the narrative connection of because if you take those elements and then design something, because this is designed by the Jinx, right? Like it was a gift, from Jinx to the Sevika. So when Jinx starts kind of like gathering all these like small elements to build this arm, that idea like is really awesome because that is just so kind of special to Jinx, and so that's why it's so different. So in the beginning it wasn't really that, but once the Arno decide like, oh yeah, let's make the Sevika's art, like, but everything has to be based on all the elements from the Arcane. Direction was more clear, but the toughest thing was you have to be very really big. Also, you should contain like at least like 4 or 5 different functionality in terms of. So you guys remember the whole fight sequence? It had like this kind of like a punch machine came out from like the claw. You had like the flamethrower. You also had like the ninja, stick to the boomerang thing, and it was just crazy. But like the philosophy of art is, yeah, like you should have to make something really iconic. You have to have like the really iconic silhouette. In other words, like the silhouette has to be very simple and very very simple and then very like memorable, right? But by adding all of those mechanisms and like functionality, like there's no way like like I could execute that. So this is why we had another amazing artist. I forget his name. Like was like one of the Russian artists, like some European artist. He did like amazing set of like this kind of like more kind of like a brutalist style of like the direction. But since we changed the design, so I gathered all these like elements from it, as you guys can see here, like the left top, that's like a chopper from the Arcane. So I started like designing some variations for like the chopper area. So like kind of like experimenting with like a different size of like a claw. And as you like on the right, some of the reference I used was like this kind of like the pistol art. And then like some kind of like a steampunk type of like like this all these like the detailed and the hydraulics and all this stuff. So from here, that model is actually from the footage like the 3D model, like from season 1 and 2. So one of the most important thing was like I had to play with the proportion. It couldn't be. You should be big enough, but it shouldn't look like this. Sometimes you look at like this exaggerated like the anime, like one of the armies like it's like 10 times bigger the characters, and that wasn't the direction that we wanted to take. So here I kind of have to try to come up with like the best the proportion of the arm compared to the Sevika's the whole height. And then here, like, okay, so I started like using all these different like the elements from like arcade, which is like, yeah, the chopper head, and then also that was one of the, yeah, you guys can find all this like, in the arcade scene. That was like when Vi was like practicing the Jinx as well, and then later in the episode, like when they were doing the punchback thing, and then that was like kind of like the scoreboard. So, and then this was also Arno's idea. The director is like, oh yeah, like it should feel like a carnival, you know, it's like some when Sevika like executes like one of the function or like lands some of the like the weapon to Smeech, this scoreboard actually like kind of flips around and then it kind of like gives you like the score and then like it does like a fireworks and so they all had they had all the ideas like, but it was just so hard for me to like practicing everything together and then it's still like come up with like really cool like silhouettes. So I don't think I executed this. The design I'm doing here was the final. I think also it went to Fortiche and then they actually like, executed so it can like fit perfectly into the entire scene. So here is like just I took the chomper head from the arcade and then kind of like adding the Jinx. How to say like the Jinx fight. We always say like we start putting all this kind of in the Neo side and then like this kind of like the sparkly like graffitis and stuff like that. We used to call it like we have to like the Jinx fight like little more. So yeah, I was like really exploring with the based on the chomper head like what could be kind of like a different options for we can go but I think we came up with like if I remember correctly it was E. Because of the silhouette and then how like the whole silhouette it felt like very menacing. Then the next one. So yeah, here is like the shoulder part I was kind of exploring. So one of the ideas like of the British was actually yeah, like every time she does some kind of like the move or like some function comes out, there should be a like a speaker like attached to it. And then like the Jinx voice comes out or something like that, or like a really kind of like annoying, the sound coming out. And so Sevika is like kind of like really annoyed by it. So you can kind of tell like if you look at like the entire sequence. So yeah, this was like just the exploration of like just the top part. So yeah, like exploring like the entire the silhouette of the art, but also we had to like kind of go into like different parts and then kind of try to figure out like what works the best. So yeah, as you can see here, yeah, so all the reference here was I was gathering like this kind of like old looking, the speaker from like the Victorian era, also like there's some steampunk like the speaker and stuff like that. So I was just kind of started like implementing different ideas of that, and then so yeah, so I think that was the Sevika. It was also it's a 3D model that was provided by. I think it's a concept. I don't know, but it was a Fortiche because the final 3D model was just like the concept. So this was like a really like weird like the pose, right? But we had to use this pose because the arm had to be like really shown. So based on everything I kind of explored previously, so I started adding some more functionality. So key was also like how to keep the silhouette like the most clean and then really readable. It was really possible, right? So so probably like for me, it's the most readable one is the last one and then the first one. But maybe like we can play with like some kind of like a punch, the mechanism kind of like it comes out. I think for final compositing, this punch back comes out of like this mod, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so this was like kind of like a final like the render of how the Sevika's art will kind of look like, and then in the dark maybe it kind of glows like a lot of like kind of Jinx graffitis and stuff like that. So this was like it was kind of close to the final, but this was like the final like kind of like the stage I worked on, and then I sent to Fortiche, and then also like even before I worked on this, I think there's two artists and then there's another artist like after this. We all like the work of this one project, which was like fantastic. So yeah, I did a lot of the Arcane project. Like this was just a normal process. Like I mentioned a little bit about the Jinx final like weapon. It was done the same way. It took us like such a long time. We were even like kind of thinking about like because I think the final design was the shark, right? With like shark and then the rhino. But we were even thinking like of even adding like the rabbit, like how that worked, right? And then even the rhino, and so there was so many like this kind of like the process was going on, and then yeah, so I think it's a whole process was like just unbelievable to work on. So yeah, and then there's one more actually project. There's one more like the prop design I want to share. I think it's towards the end of the season 2. I think yeah, they wanted something like the Warwick tracker. This is a final look. So actually, this is like the direction that came from like the fourth edition. So like the name of the task was like the Shinji's contest. I don't know how many of you like kind of really focused on this because it's not like the Jinx weapon or like called like the Smeech, but as a concept artist, I don't know what you guys like, but like it's really fun to work on like these kind of like the props and like the vehicles and props that requires a lot of like functionality. In other words, like it requires a lot of like kind of design problem solving. So I think everyone has like a little different strength, right? Like some people like they prefer doing like more key art stuff or more painting work. Some people they prefer like doing this type of like the design stuff. But for me, I think personally, this is like one of my favorite type of like the task that I do and in Arcane. So Shinji Compass was like, so Shinji was like always have this kind of like Warwick tracker. So he knows like where like Warwick is, how close the Warwick is actually approaching, and how far like Warwick is at. And then it's all like kind of like operated by the combining his own blood and the Warwick's blood as well. Like so, yeah. I mean, the idea was like pretty clear. This also came from like the Fortis studio. Like so Arna pretty much like the look should be very straightforward, like something kind of like a like very gothic, very like the steampunk as well. Like, but it could be like so. This kind of like the mood board here was like, oh yeah, I mean this is like great art direction already. So like here, all I had to do was like, okay, then let me make sure like it matches like the description of the script. So from that like kind of art reference and then like kind of visual reference, like one thing I was thinking of, how many artists, I don't know, like do still use this? I don't know, like some doctor's office still like they check your yes right, yeah. Mostly it's like machine nowadays, but so every time like I used to have like this kind of like a fear or trauma, and every time like they try to measure my like a pulse at the pulse. So like I have this feeling every time like they kind of that this part right here like it contracts and it expands, like it's like a weird feeling, right? Like it really like it kind of like tightens your like arm. So I thought like, oh, then it might be cool to actually incorporate that into this design. So these two elements are the basic reference I use for this design. So as you can see, like I don't know what that is. I don't even know what under one name I searched for the reference, because usually I spend I know like there's a lot of like maybe people here like wants to be a concept artist too, but I also teach. I've been teaching at the Cosm Art for like 12 years. Like I think I mentioned this like several times, even yesterday during the portfolio prep. More professional you are, you use way more reference. Like literally, like way more is like we spend when I was at the art center, the Riot world building team. We used to spend the whole week, not just the 1 or 2 days or like couple hours. We just spent like the whole week just to find the reference, to come up with like all these different like the factions built over like the song and all that. So reference is like it's so important that it's the reference finding skill is literally like half of how good you are as like a concept artist. But it's really hard to kind of realize that until you start working. So this was just like 2 images, but I'm pretty sure like I spent like at least a day or 2, like I know, right? It's like how long does it take to find that? But maybe it took pretty long time to like kind of like find that, right? So I had like pretty good reference of these 2, and then the previous the direction from Fortiche. So I started like kind of started like kind of designing. Yeah, that was my arm actually. So I tried to like try to imagine when I was in like the doctor's office, and then one thing I was like really I thought like would be really interesting was, this kind of like it's almost kind of like a bag of, I couldn't think of like what material that would be. Like maybe it was a rubber, but I was thinking more like a paper, or like whether it's a rubber or paper, like it contracts and then it expands every time like a Warwick is closer to you. So like when Warwick is like, if you remember the episode, like when Warwick was kind of like chasing the Smeech, right? When he got jailed and prisoned in the, I forget the name of that, but when he was like prisoned with the oh my god, I forgot every name. How can I? But with the rest of the Zon people, and then like he was kind of approaching to the Singe, and then every time like the Warwick is like closer to you, I was thinking like, yeah, maybe it starts like beating like really slow, but Warwick is closer to you, and it gets closer and closer. It starts beating really fast, right? So and then he knows like how like close Warwick is, right? Of course, like, that didn't go into the movie, but yeah. So that was the whole idea, and then this was like all from the direction to it would have to be like some kind of like a compass, so it directs like which direction Warwick's coming from. And then this was like a Warwick set up blood, which is green, and then the red one was like a singed blood of Singe. So when he like, and it's kind of like a BS, right? It's like it's not gonna work like that, but that's a job of a concept artist. Like we just take whatever that doesn't make sense, and then visually we have to solve that. Yeah, it can work, right? It's like visually it looks like it can work, but yeah, it's not gonna work like that. But so yeah, with these little two cylinders, that you can kind of detach it, and then I think it's the movie like, and then you can kind of like put it right here, and then you can take it out, and then kind of put it back. So like that. So yeah, this one was pretty smooth, and I think the Arno from British, the director, like he really liked this idea. So yeah, I went ahead and kind of start like from here I was refining the design, and then start adding the color. So so probably like the one thing I refined was like I wanted to make it more how to say, like a little more, I don't know, the disgusting is like right word, but like little like disturbing, maybe more like a disturbing, and then more so I started putting like this kind of like this was like a ribcage of a human bone. So so it looks like a kind of like it implies like a death, right? It's like that's how I feel like every time like Warwick kind of comes in. So like yeah, and I added more of like this Zon types of like the detail here, and then yeah, every time when you take the blood test, like there's a like needle, and then it goes in and then it comes out. So I think like my childhood, like the trauma, like really served well here for the design and stuff. So yeah, so this was fun, and then but usually like how process work is like it's up to the artist, like whether, for example, like environment concept, like you can't just do the black and white concept, and then if that communicates like all the information enough, you don't have to do the color piece. But sometimes like yeah, if you do the color piece, and if that conveys the idea better, we always go with the color, right? But for example, like this one, I really wanted to take this to the rendering as well, like without light drawing and stuff, but there's no reason to do that, right? Because all the communication and then idea was there, and then when Fortish can do this, right? Like, yeah, that doesn't really matter, right? So like, yeah, the way they turned this into, like the final composition is like it's just unbelievable. So yeah, so these were like three like the designs I wanted to share. Then some other stuff is like yeah, there are like more like the prop designs, and some of like there's more kind of like a problem solving design tasks. But I also wanted to share some of the like key shot paintings. So it's the way like Arcane production was like very different from like other. I only worked at the Sony Animation besides like Arcane, so I can't really say like I'm an expert in animation field. But I'm pretty sure like there's so many artists out there, like they have way more experience that in animation and like production, visual development. So this is very different from like each studios. But what Arcane the production was a very, very special for me, kind of compared to Sony, was like Arcane, and I think that as well as like a Spider-Verse too, the production quality they were actually shooting for was really high. So for example, like if I try to design anything that I did in Arcane in other animation project and outside of the Arcane studio, like I'll probably be like, hey, that's too much budget, like you can't do that, right? But that's why a lot of times if you guys take your portfolio to some of the like professionals, like I'm pretty sure they kind of give you guys a feedback, stuff like, yeah, your portfolio is like a little more towards like a feature. Oh, your portfolio is a little more like a TV animation, or your portfolio is more like a video game. Or I'm pretty sure like a lot of you kind of heard that. It's mainly because of that. But I think the bar or the difference between like animation, like feature TV, video game, it's really getting big. So I think the Arcane like took really like a huge part in that. Not just kind of like the bringing animation to like not just of course like still it was like a mainstream, but like a lot of like the image, the general image of like the animation or the anime was like kind of like for younger generation. But I think I remember like after Arcane and then Spider-Verse, like the head of the Sony Animation, like that she was saying like, yeah, the animation now should be for like the young adult and even beyond that as well. So I think the Arcane like I think contributed like a really big part of that. So in the production, like we had to do a lot of like those designs and stuff like that, but that was more geared towards like the production. But in the beginning, like especially first like a year or two or three, we had to do a lot of these kind of key shop paintings, So if I kind of give you like some quick feedback on, because I kind of did the portfolio like introduction yesterday in one of the panels, but not for the art college portfolio, but for the job portfolios, I think that having a key shop painting is almost a must. It's a must. Like maybe a lot of people can disagree with me, but at least when we're trying to hire people, like at the Arcane project or even some of the project that I worked on, like the Riot, we really see that like it's more like you have to have like a generalist, I can do character design, environment design, like a prop design. And my specialty is, like a key shop painting, or like sometimes vice versa. But you have to be a generalist, but also you have to show that you are a specialist as well. So I think it's really, really important. So the funny thing about this painting was like this painting was done even before season 1. So that's why like I know a lot of you was like, what is that like airship? I've never seen it in the show. So that's exactly what happened. So now I can share this because like because the whole show is over a year ago. But so this was like the time when the Arcane was like finally approved the whole season. A lot of artists like we got together and then like okay, with the writers. I talked about the writers room earlier, but like with a bunch of writers and the showrunner like Christian and Alex, they're giving us the like they're crazy ideas, right? And like, oh, okay, what could have been, what could have happened? Like, you could have been this, could have been that. So like, we take those ideas and then we start kind of illustrating, so yeah, if you can see, like Caitlin doesn't have like her, like that, like really badass like rifle, it's none of that. But we're just imagining, oh yeah, there could be possibly like the war between like Zod and Piltover. So that's the only information I had, and then. Actually, like Alex, this was I think it's Alex or Christian. Yeah, it'd be nice, like there's like the Zonians, like Zonites, like swarming through the bridge, but like maybe Heimerdinger like built his like this kind of like some kind of like the tower that like shoot out this kind of like electric the beams and stuff like that. So okay, yeah, that'll be cool. And so this was like in a key shop, one of the key shop paintings of like I was doing. We had like the 3-4 different artists at Riot, the Santa Monica studio back then, and then we were like constantly doing this. And then Forticia Studio was like still working on their end to develop the look of Arcane that you guys know like today. So that time was still like kind of like up in the air kind of thing. This was it's very different. This was like towards the end of the season 2. So the idea was like you guys already know this, and they were talking about like how how we should like kind of end the story of between like the Mel and Mbessa, right? So it's like, yeah, Mbessa will die on the arm of like the Mel. So okay, that's cool. And then that's the one thing I do. And then of course like the Mbessa's design already done by like Victor. You should totally check him out. Like, yeah, he's a beast. Yeah, he did most of like costume design, and I think he actually like emphasized his design. He designed, maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, I don't know, maybe, but he designed a lot of like emphasize like a new costume, for season 2, and the Mel's design was already there, but like the Anya is another like this amazing the character artist. Like she did a lot of like the costume designs for like the Mel, so the design was already there. So like, and I just took I saw their like the character designs, and then we just have to put into this like in a scene, right? So one thing I tried to really like try to kind of like nail down here was the environmental like damage and the effect of like the Mel's power, right? So this is like the shot that like Mel finally like kind of reveals her power. So after she like kind of like releases like every energy and every power on the like actually like Mbessa dies because of that. But after the crazy like explosion, like as you can see, like it just decimated, right? Like the entire like her surrounding is like it's almost like a nuclear like smaller version of like the nuclear like the explosion kind of thing. So and then you can kind of tell like her like the energy whip is kind of like damaging like in the staircase and all that. Like yeah, I forgot how close the final was, but it doesn't really matter. Like, and at this time, like we just kind of throw all these different ideas. So what this does is like it gives like a Christian like Alex our showrunners like some ideas. Like they first have their ideas, right, and then they kind of give us like the task or just a task that can you come up with something, and then sometimes like the Forticia studio Arnaud and Pascal like they tell us, hey, what about we try this, and then we do these versions, and then they take each of these kind of key shots and they turn into like Forticia magic again. Of course, like they change things a lot too. If they think it's now certain things like not working, it looks great into the illustration, but if they think it's like, oh no, then I think there's a better idea, or like they get inspired and from like some other stuff like. So that's how this whole process kind of works. So yeah, this was one of the key shots on the end of the season 2. Yeah, this was also the season 2. I don't know how this works, but like, should we? Maybe I'll try to finish this in 5 minutes, and then we can have like, if you guys have like a Q&A session. I don't know if we have that, but I think it'd be great. So yeah, I'll try to finish this in 5 minutes. And then this was probably the last shot I'm gonna share here as well. Like, it's also it looks very different from like the Minion Swarm and the end of the season 2. So I specifically like remember this. I think this was like directly came from I think Alex, one of our like the Christian, and then Alex was our like in the showrunners. He wanted to see like at the end like there's a minion like a swarm and like everyone like the big fight, right? This is under the Hextech Hexgate, right? Did I say it? Yeah, it's an Hexgate. So under the Hexgate. But if you look, if you watch the end of season 2, like this is not how the minions are actually attacking. They're like crawling on top of like the tower. And then, but I don't know, back then, like, I didn't have like clear vision, and Alex also like, just, he had the vision of like, okay, we have to see like everyone versus like, like this minion swarm. So I thought that maybe the best way to showing the swarm of like the minions, like, maybe like having them kind of like swung towards like, all this kind of Piltover, the Tiltovians and like the Vi, and she's kind of trying to kind of defend the gate. So yeah, I mean, it didn't end up like looking, like nothing like this, I guess, but just wanted to share like, this is sometimes like this is like most fun part of like kind of process when there's like a blue sky, when there's no like an exact the storyboard or even the script yet. Just read a bunch of like these raw ideas from like the directors and the showrunners, and then like we just have to kind of like execute like fit their vision. So they can eventually like kind of just go into like more detail, like more deeper, like the ideas of to kind of like complete the whole sequence. Yeah, so yeah, it was again like this is very small part of like all the concepts like I involved, and also it's a really tiny fraction of like the entire like Arcane art and production. And I wish there is like I know like we have like some Arcane the Fortish folks were here like last year too, but I know we had like some in the Nucleus Gallery, like there's some like Arcane like art exhibition as well. But I wish in the future like some of the like this amazing like Fortish artists, or even like some of the like the Arcane folks, they can kind of like talk about way more. I mean, there's way more. This is like I didn't even like first like share like like not many part of like that everything happened, but yeah, I wish that there's more like like the opportunities like this and panels like for those amazing folks to kind of talk about more about the process and stuff. So yeah, so we have like 10 more minutes, but I think I can like end the presentation here. So we can if you guys have any questions or Q&A, I can kind of do it in next 10 minutes.